there. You are listening to the Girl Talk podcast, brought to you by our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
Hey, I'm Tricia.
And today we're going to dive into the topic because we all have kids. What do you do with your kids' friends? There's not anything you can do with them, actually. But how do we teach our kids how to make good friends? This is, I think, a necessary life skill, but I don't ever remember anybody going through the process with me and helping me think through, like, what makes a good friend and how do I see friendships modeled in my world? And so we're going to dive into that topic fully. So let's start at the beginning. And I think a good place to start is to look at our own friendships.
Yeah.
And think about how we're modeling good, healthy friendships for our kids. Like, what do they see from our friendships? If you were to take yourself kind of out of the situation and look at your friendships, what kind of qualities and what kind of friendships do you have?
I actually want to start with what was modeled for me.
Okay.
Because my parents had this group of people that got together. They called themselves the Clique. There were 6 couples, and they got together once a month. They've been doing it now for 45 years.
Wow.
Are you serious?
Actually, longer than that. Probably 47 or 48 years.
Yeah.
In fact, the funeral I went to yesterday was the first of that group of people to pass away.
Oh, yeah.
A hard day. But that group of people have been the rocks for my parents.
Wow.
My parents have said multiple times, we are still married because all of us are still married because we had each other to help us walk through life together.
Do you know that is so very interesting that you mentioned that, because now that I think of it, I was just thinking of my kid and her friends and how I've modeled that for her. But now that you say that, as I look back on my life, my parents had a group of friends that traveled with them throughout life, that raised kids together, that, and I remember at one point in my life looking at them and thinking, I wonder if I'll have people who are in my life for that long.
Yeah.
Because now friendship seems to be dispensable. You just find, if you disagree on something.
Transfer.
Yeah. And really, these people have traveled, raised kids together, gone through a lot of difficulty together, illnesses. I mean, lots of things. And so now that you say that, that's interesting because I'd never thought of that before you mentioned that. And you might be able to say the same thing about your parents.
I remember their close friends. Like, they didn't have any major groups like you're talking about, but I do remember their close friends. Yeah. And their close friends became my close friends. Their kids became my close friends.
Right.
And to this day, like, actually, I'm leaving on a girls' trip this weekend with one of the girls who was some of my parents' best friend's daughter, and we've been friends since we were basically 2 years old.
Yeah,
so that's a wonderful thing, and I do talk about that with my kids. When you brought up the subject of our kids' friendships, I just keep thinking it was so easy when they were younger, because we could set up play dates with the people that we loved, and we knew the parents, and we knew the environment, and we knew what was going to happen. But as my kids are getting older, I realize I don't have that. I don't know who their friends are because they're branching out and they're doing different things, and I have literally no control over that now.
Right. And that's why I think, especially in the stage of life that we're in, I think it's important to have those conversations about what makes good friends. Now, in terms of full disclosure, these have been more around a boy in our household, what's important to you, when you think about somebody who, because, kids these days talk about dating. They see each other at school. That is not dating.
Going together. That's what we always talked about.
Yeah. And my dad used to say, "Where are you going?" I was like, I don't know, nowhere. But I think that applies to friendships as well, to have the conversation of thinking through, like, what think about the friends that you have. What makes a good friend? We had this conversation recently. We had some time in the car, and I said, what do you think makes a good friend? And to hear her perspective on that,
that's a
14-year-old perspective, was interesting. And I said, well, what do you want to be as a friend? And she started listing off those qualities, and we started, kind of comparing the two. And then we did the opposite thing. I said, what makes a bad friend? And we started going through those things to just try to get her to help think through the process, because I don't ever remember having that conversation.
Well,
or
I
anything.
applaud you for asking the question.
Me too.
Because I think that's something we should all do is ask our children so that they are thinking about it for themselves.
Yeah.
And then they can start to look around at the world around them and say, oh, I see you have good friends. Let me figure that out.
Well, do you know what really kind of holistically changed my idea of parenting was a friend of mine. I was trying to teach Ella how to roller skate. I cannot roller skate. So, number one, who am I to be teaching her how to roller skate? But I realized in that process that I wasn't really trying to teach her how to roller skate. I was teaching her how to fall.
Oh, yeah.
And I think our job as parents is to teach kids when they fall that they can get back up and brush themselves off and try again, because they're not going to make good choices every single time. And I've really struggled with that in my parenting, because I want her to make good decisions all the time. Well, that just doesn't happen. We are sinful people in a sinful culture, and we're going to make bad decisions. But I feel like on the other side of that, I can say, okay, let's think about this and let's talk about it in a way that helps you to learn from it and kind of apply those things in other situations, so that you next time maybe you don't make the totally right decision, but you make a better decision. And that's something that I feel like, because I'm a good question asker, but I'm not always ready for her responses, because her responses and my responses obviously are different. But I think asking questions is a good way to get kids talking, because they feel like they're involved in the conversation.
Especially the kind of questions that they don't have to answer, the ones that they can reflect on.
Yeah, and
Like
I think
that. I think that's important.
I think girls and boys are different. Y'all
yes.
both have boys. I have a girl, and I was tickled because in a couple of different situations we have rides worked out, where I take girls home. And we had a situation the other day where I had to pick up one of the gals earlier than I had to pick up Ella. So it was just me and her friend in the car. And I was taking her home, and she just like for 10 minutes sat in the car in the driveway at her house just talking to me. And I was like,
beautiful.
This is I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I texted her mom afterwards, and I was like, I love your kids so much, because when I pick them up from school every day, I'm like, how was your day? Tell me something about it. What was it you really enjoyed today? And we asked those questions and get those conversations started. And she, of course, was talking about a boy. But I was so glad that she was talking to me about him, because I was like, I want to meet him. She was like, well, you're like my second mama, so I'm going to introduce you. And hearing those conversations and having those conversations with kids is so helpful, because I want to be a parent that kids will come to.
Yeah. I guess I'm just going to say I'm jelly.
Okay.
I'm jelly. My boys, especially my oldest, will not talk, and I don't know what to do. I was like, I'm going to ground you if you don't tell me about your day. That didn't work well.
Yeah.
But I can't get them to talk, and I'm struggling with that, because I want to be the kind of parent who is invited in on some level, and I feel like I don't know how to dig in there. He's a teenager. He's sullen.
Yeah.
And I want to dig in there, and I don't know how.
Every day is not like
in
that.
Boys and girls.
Yeah,
Well,
I will say that. But we do this thing, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this on our podcast, but this is what we do. When they get in the car, I'm like, okay, happy and crappy. What was the happiest moment of your day? What was the crappiest moment of your day? And I do that, and somehow they tell me. Some days they'll say, oh, it's fine. I mean, nothing really, earth shattering. But there are days when they'll really open up and say, I didn't do well on the test, or, and we get a chance to kind of talk around those things and discuss them. But it's not like that every day. I don't want to paint this picture that I'm like June Cleaver and I have fresh baked cookies when they get home, because that's not.
Oh, me too.
I fell a lot. And probably one of the reasons that they're so comfortable telling me, because I tell all my mistakes.
And I think that's one of the things that makes a good friend.
Yeah.
Is that you're willing
They overshare.
They overshare, yes.
They're as messed up as you are.
I'm a lot better off than her. I can just tell you that. Yeah.
But they ask questions about you.
Right.
They are genuinely interested in you. They care about your life. They want to have a conversation with you. They want to really listen to who you are and what you have experienced in your day. And so by asking those questions of Ella, by asking those questions of our boys, we are also modeling for them what it means to be a friend to somebody else. Not that they necessarily are going to go to their best friend and go, hey, how was your day today?
Right.
But they at least are being modeled to.
Right.
They'll pick it up sooner or later.
Right.
In my Bible study group, there are a few of us who don't get a lot of interaction from our kids, and so we're not sure kind of where they are friend-wise and all this sort of thing. And so we've committed to praying for each other's kids. And for a while we were saying, oh, God, please let my kid have a good friend. Please let my kid have a Christian friend. Please point my kid to the right friends that honor you. And then one day, another mom in the group was like, instead of let's praying for, please let my kid have a good friend, we started praying, please let my kid be a good friend.
Oh, that's great.
Because when they are a good friend, they're going to draw good friends to them. And that was sort of a interesting moment of how we can pray even more expansively for our kids. And I will say this, and if you're a mom out there and your kids, I've tried high, low, high and fun things, and I still can't really dig in very consistently at all. But I will say this, they, like you're saying, they are getting it on some level, because I check my kids' texts. You know, I said, you're going to get a phone, I'm going to check your text.
Right.
And I saw him through texting relating very kindly to two different people. And he was being a good listener, and he was acknowledging when he had made a mistake and asking about them and encouraging them. And that made me feel like, okay, I might not see it, but he's getting it on some level, and he's giving it to his friends. So that made me feel better.
Count that as a win.
It was
absolutely huge win.
Yeah, it was a win. But
and he learned that from somebody.
That's true.
You know, the being kind. You modeled that for him, because that's the kind of person you are. And so I think a lot of times our kids are picking up the things that we do for them as well. And the more we model for them good friend behaviors, the better off they are at being able to manage those behaviors.
Yeah.
And I think my kiddo saw, when my mom died, saw our friend group pour into us with groceries and lawn care and connections and all kinds of stuff, dinners, and that makes a difference too.
Yeah. So, what do you do when you see your kid engaging in a unhealthy friendship? I don't want to say bad, because I think the teenage years, I mean, like, oh my word, you're just learning how to do all this stuff. And it's all, your hormones are going crazy, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I think the first, honestly, reaction for most moms is to flip out and think, oh no, the worst scenario for whatever this bad situation or unhealthy friendship, or a kid that may, not be who you want your children to hang out with. But I've also tried to have conversations around, God loves them too, and not kind of build into her there are better than and less than, like, categorize people, because I think that
write people off.
Yeah. That's unfair. And there's so much of that going on in our world right now.
Yes.
And there's so much.
You're with me or against me.
Right.
Which is it?
Like, we can disagree on an issue and still be friends.
Yeah.
Like, sure. We don't have to agree on everything. And, but I think probably for me, the first gut reaction I have is just to flip out. Run screaming into the woods. And
you, Carol?
Yeah, I know, right? So surprising.
I think that's where those conversations come in really handy too, to be able to say, hey, tell me more about this kid. And what do you think makes this kid a good friend? You obviously have chosen them as a friend.
Right.
What is it that you like about them?
Yes.
What is it that you see in them? And
they often don't know. They often can't verbalize that. And so I think that's some of what, I think probably most kids this age, they can't put their finger on it because they don't really know. They don't have words for the emotions like we do as adults. We kind of know those things, but they don't always have words for it. So, and I would say to you, if you have trouble getting your kid to talk, don't be discouraged and don't let that stop you from talking to them. Because one of the things, and Ella will roll her eyes because she'll like, oh, it's story time with Mom. Because I will tell a story from my life, because I'm having a hard time relating to her, or I'm having a hard time getting her to talk to me. So I'll tell her a story from my life about it. And it can be something little, big. It can be, you know, when I did something my parents told me not to, or when I had a friendship that went bad. And I mean, just all these things. And so I'll tell her a story about it. And she often laughs at me because usually I have a punchline at the end, just because that's the way my life works. Everything's a punchline, you know. But to get them comfortable with the fact that you didn't always make the right choices, and that you, we had a situation recently where we were talking about bullies, and I was bullied when I was in school. This girl was like, I'm sure she wasn't, but she was like 10 times taller than me, and she liked the boy I like, and, you know, she threatened me and would call my house. I didn't tell anybody because I was scared to death. And like we were at a dance, you know, and we're doing the slow dance where, you know, rock back and forth. It's not really dancing. It's just kind of the Frankenstein dance. And she like comes beside me and bumps me out of the way and sends me flying across the gymnasium, you know. And so I just was like, okay, you can have him. I guess it's not that important for me. But I told her that story, and it got her to laughing about, you know, me and my situation. And then she was like, well, you know, that happens sometimes at school, and started the conversations. So I think,
yeah, you know, I think back on my life and what worked for me as a high schooler, especially. I had well, at least a guy I dated in high school who I should not have been with. You know, it was a bad influence, very bad influence. I had lots of really good friends, but I also had some not so good influences at different places in my life. And my parents were, I think the thing that worked for me was when people asked questions and said, hey, you know, what do you think about this person? What did not work for me is when my parents said, you don't spend time with them. Because yes, when it became a do this, don't do that kind of thing, I was quick to rebel and say, well, I'm my own person. I can do whatever I want. Thank you very much. But if somebody, when they helped me think through something, to say, are you really making wise decisions? Is this really what you want for the rest of your life? Is this really somebody you want to have in your life? It helped me come to a better decision for myself, and not from a place of rebellion and disobedience, but from a place of maturity.
Or even acquiescence, you know. You want your kid not to just, you know, behave in that way, but to understand. That's really good. That's very, very helpful. And I like the questions that you just posed just out of the air. What were they again? It was like, is this really what you want? And
is this, what do you,
is this the direction you want to go in? Because what's that quote? Show me your friends and I'll show you your future, or something like that. Things like that. Very, very helpful to help them understand. And telling a story about your own life is something that I've done occasionally, but I want to do more of, because that, I don't think, at least my kids see, they never think about me beyond this age. I've always been this age. I've always been mom. No, I was a kid making a lot of mistakes. And telling those stories allows that teaching moment without it being, you know, awkward. And like sitting in the classroom, but it really is getting the point across. And I've got plenty of crazy stories.
I've done such a good job of making my child think I'm perfect. I don't want to burst that bubble now.
Bring them over to my house. Well, come on, Will.
Oh, but it's so true to share those. It's such a good idea to share those failures. It's just hard. That's a hard thing as a mama to admit.
Well,
I'm not perfect.
You don't want them to go, oh, well, I'll do that too then. I have had that thought.
Right.
Well, and I think the reason that you tell those stories is not because, you know, you're pointedly wanting them to make that decision, but you're showing them the process. And part of that is saying, here were the ramifications of my decision in that. You know, I didn't think that
from
through.
Somebody else's mistakes.
Exactly.
Not glorify sin,
the
not
behavior,
the mistake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think the best thing that we can walk away with today is ask good questions and then listen. Let me just say, I'm learning more and more that when my daughter's trying to talk to me or wants me to watch her do something, when I've seen her do it 5,638,000 times, she's wanting my attention. And I got to learn to put the screen down.
Or the anything down.
Yes.
The book, the screen, the, you know, just, the nachos.
Give them that eye contact.
Give them that eye contact and pay attention. And that's been a big lesson for me in the last little bit. Not because I'm staring at a screen all day, but just sometimes I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. And God's kind of said, you know, she's going to graduate in a couple years and you're going to be wanting this moment back where she wants you to watch her. So do it, you know. Every time I kind of act out here at work and I want somebody to watch me, make a fool of myself. He taps on my shoulder and goes, mm-hmm.
It's your inner 14-year-old coming
That's my
out.
inner 14-year-old, yeah. And so I think ask good questions.
Yeah.
Tell good stories about your life and tell the not so good stories too. Like you said, not to glorify sin or a bad habit or anything like that, but to tell them that there are consequences and to be real honest about how hard that was, I think is another good place. And really my takeaway from parenting is we're just here to teach them how to fall and to get back up because they are going to fall. They're going to make bad decisions. Not do everything right.
And that's part of what we can pray for.
It is our
Pray
job
for
to
them,
help mold
to
and
be a
shape
good
them.
friend.
Right.
That's right.
And to pray for them. You brought up a good point. Pray for them. I feel like I don't pray for my kid nearly enough. And so make it a point to pray for them. And I think we're all doing a lot better than we think we are.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I know,
I
me
hope
too.
so,
Sounds good.
Me too. Because we tend to be really hard on ourselves when it comes to parenting. So you are doing better than you think you are, and you're doing a great job. And if you happen to not have kids and are listening to this podcast, I will say that you are a very needed voice in this conversation because oftentimes you can have more influence and impact than we as moms can.
So true.
And there's
A role model.
I am so thankful. I forget what the statistic is, but it talks about having so many people around your teenager to speak into them. And often those voices, people will listen to, we've got some young adults that go to our church who are just amazing, and my daughter will listen to them. Just whatever they say is the gospel. I've been saying that same thing for 10 years, and she's like, just she hears wah, 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 wah. But from them, it's good advice and wisdom. Yeah. And so if you are not a mom and you speak into the lives of teens or younger children, know that you probably have the greatest opportunity for impact in that situation as well.
You made me think of a quote that I have to share because I think it's helped me, and I hope it'll hit your all's heart like it did mine. You can never fail if you don't quit. So stay in there. Stay in the fight. For me, dig into the getting your kids to talk to you, or continue to love them and model for them and point up for them and ask them the right questions and all those things. But you can never fail if you don't quit.
Great place. Great place to land here on this podcast. If you've got stuff you want to ask, got questions, you got advice, we'd love to hear from you. You're always welcome to email us at girltalk@thelightfm.org. Want to say a great big thank you to our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee for sponsoring this season. We love you folks. Couldn't do it without your help. And we'll see you next time we gather around these microphones for the Girl Talk podcast.